I have the pleasure of introducing Serah Blain. She's the Executive Director of the Secular Coalition for Arizona, where she advocates for Arizona's atheists, agnostics, humanists, and other free thinkers in the state, at the state capitol. And Serah has been an active member of the Arizona non-theistic community since moving to the state in 2009, and is the organizer for the Prescott Freethinkers, Flagstaff Freethinkers, and Sedona Verde Valley Freethinkers. Serah founded the Secular Student Alliance at the Prescott College, where she studied social ethics and served on the inaugural board of the Secular Coalition for Arizona. Serah also serves on the board of Prescott Pride, the board of the Prescott Pride Center, and is a hospice volunteer. No spare time. She lives in Flagstaff with her 2 children and a dog. Now, I talked with her a little bit before this, and she's been the executive director for 2 years. And there's, in case you're not aware of it, there's a lot of activity that we should pay a lot of attention to here in the state of Arizona. And she cut her teeth in some of these activities by being associated with the LGBT community. So, will you welcome Serah Blain?
Thank you very much. It is quite an honor to be speaking behind the FreeThought Arizona banner. You guys are kind of heroes in the movement. I know many of you have been working to advance reason since before I was a twinkle in my mother's eye, which now, according to Arizona statute, is when life begins. So that's not true, actually. But we're on our way there, right? So I want to thank you all just for the work that you've done to advance secular values and reason and compassion and free thought in our state. And while we're here talking about these great secular enlightenment values, I don't know if any of you know where our governor is. She is at the Values Voter Summit in Washington, D.C. This is a summit put on by the Family Research Council. It's a project of focus on the family. And this organization has co-opted the term values to mean Orthodox Christianity, and they're attempting to codify those values into law. In fact, their website says, "One of the great deceptions ever perpetrated upon modern America has been through the myth of the wall of separation between church and state." And so let me tell you a little bit about some of these values, right? So they want to dismantle the wall of separation between church and state. They want to dismantle reproductive health care. They want to deny LGBT marriage equality. They're defunding public schools. And I noticed that many of their headline speakers happen to be in Sean Faircloth's book, Attack of the Theocrats, as the Fundamentalist 50. So these are some great characters, Glenn Beck being my favorite of all time. So we, Secular Coalition for Arizona, actually asked the governor not to attend this summit. We wrote her a letter, which she, of course, promptly disregarded. But in our letter we wrote, "While values are certainly an important part of public discourse during an election season, the focus should be on values that promote the common good for all Americans, regardless of religious belief or non-belief, not those that seek to establish the sectarian morality of one particular religious perspective." And those values that promote the common good for all Americans are the values that the Secular Coalition for Arizona lobbies on. So we lobby on behalf of Arizona's atheists, agnostics, humanists, and freethinkers, but the secular government that we advocate for, it's good for all Arizonans, regardless of religious belief or non-belief. And so with that ideal, to insist that public policy be based on facts and evidence and the advancement of human well-being rather than one particular religious conception of morality, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of the bills that we worked on this legislative season. I don't know if any of you have a flask with you. You may need a drink. it's not good. So this first set of bills here, these are bills affecting your doctor's ability to provide the best medicine and give you the best, most accurate medical advice. 2036 is one that probably many of you have heard of because it's been in the news quite a lot. It's the 20-week abortion ban. But it has much more far-reaching implications than just limiting women's access to abortion, which in and of itself is a problem. But what the right is doing is really attacking science-based medicine altogether. So it requires disclosures that are not necessarily medically accurate. They're based on theological assumptions about human development. And this is when my intern puts his tap dance to distract you all. In 1494 was a personhood bill. You guys have heard about these bills. They're making the rounds around the country in an attempt to undo Roe v. Wade. But in defining personhood from conception to natural death, it's also an attack on end-of-life choices. Fortunately, 1494 did not make it out of committee, but 2036 did. 1360 and 61 are related to in vitro fertilization and gamete donation. And again, it has these very bizarre disclosures about the value of genetic material, and this is, creating a unique, independent human being, and really very theological language, referring in language of statutes to fetuses as unborn children, which is, of course, not a medical or legal term. And so, in line with their attack on medicine, we have a set of bills that are, they call them religious freedom bills. But what they really do is empower medical professionals and other professionals, again, these are far-reaching, to discriminate against patients and clients on the basis of religion. So 1365 allows pharmacists to refuse to dispense medicine based on religious objections. It could potentially allow a doctor to refuse to serve an LGBT client. And in fact, many of you may have heard of the case in New Jersey. There's a gay HIV positive man suing a hospital because a doctor there refused to give him his HIV medication because it was God's judgment on him. So it's disturbing to say the least. So, and 1359 is another fun one. It's the wrongful birth bill. This bill protects doctors from civil liability if they choose to lie to a pregnant woman about her pregnancy because they think giving truthful information might result in an abortion. So again, we're really seeing a serious assault on medicine in our state, and a lot of it's targeted to reproductive health care, but it's going to have much more far-reaching implications than just that. This set here are bills related to education. Just face-palming as I think about some of the testimony that I did on these bills and the language I heard. I remember Chester Crandall talking about how we've really lost the soul of our nation by taking religion out of the classroom. So they're very open about their desire to bring religion into the public schools. SB 1009 is the School Preference Childbirth Adoption Bill, which requires public school teachers and health educators to teach childbirth and adoption in preference to abortion, which is a bizarre thing for a public school to take a position on. They should be providing unbiased factual information in our public schools. 1047 and then these bottom two bills are tax credit and empowerment bills. That's essentially taking public tax dollars out of the public schools and funding private religious schools. And then we have our Bible curriculum bill, which is everybody's favorite. This allows the teaching of the Christian Bible in public schools, and part of the reason that this is such a problem is that current Arizona statute prohibits the teaching of any denominational, sectarian, or partisan material in public schools. So what this bill did was make an exception just for the teaching of the Christian Bible. So no other religious perspectives. It's not as if it's religious studies, that shows all perspectives and non-belief perspectives. It's again an example of religious privilege. This is just some of that fun Dominion stuff that that Dick was talking about. I actually came across this concurrent resolution by mistake. I was listening to the Senate on a different bill altogether, and all of a sudden I heard someone saying that God has never rescinded his grant of the lands of Israel, and I was like, what am I listening to? So we had our Senate pass this concurrent resolution. It doesn't have any implication in statute, but it gives us a good idea of the mindset of our legislators. They're just, expressing Arizona's solidarity with Israel because in Leviticus, which is a really good place to start for statute, God granted the land to Israel. So 14 of the 18 bills that we lobbied against were sponsored by the Arizona affiliate of the Family Research Council, that wonderful organization putting on the Values Voter Summit, Center for Arizona Policy. And this organization holds disproportionate sway in our legislature, and again, working to codify evangelical Christian moralities. Our issues, on the other hand, are based on the secular values that I think you're all here to support. And we've worked really hard this year to come up with an issues platform that I want to fill you in on. And I think you'll like these values a little bit better than Glenn Beck's washing the nation in blood. So for science-based medicine, right, I mean, this is just a no-brainer. Public policy related to medicine needs to be based on science, right? So unfortunately, the majority of the bills that we worked on this year were related to attacks on science-based medicine. So we're going to be working really hard in the next legislative season to make sure we don't see further erosion and to maybe put forth some policy that can protect our existing rights. Secular public schools. For me personally, public education is the most significant moral issue of our time. If we are not giving our students access to fact-based scientific information, they are not going to have the tools they need to face the major crises that they're going to be coming up in their lifetimes. Global warming, poverty, overpopulation, these issues, the solution is science-based. And the religious right is really trying to get our public money out of science education. So we're working really hard on those issues as well. Civil marriage contracts. Our state is working really hard to keep definitions of marriage theologically rooted. We have a constitutional amendment in our state that marriage is between one man and one woman. It's a covenant marriage state, which makes people who opt for that particular kind of religious marriage have much more serious restrictions on access to divorce and so forth. But this is the issue again, as Don was saying when he introduced me. LGBT marriage equality is the advocacy issue that got me into the secular movement, and it's just very clear to me that civil government contracts need to be equal for all adults, consenting adults with legal status. End-of-life choices, and I'm really pleased to be working with Anne and Compassionate Choices to look at some death with dignity options for the coming legislative season. This is the #1 issue, actually, that I hear about from people when I talk to folks in the 15 different non-theistic organizations we represent throughout the state. People want to have control over how they die and to be given options that make it peaceful and to remain, an autonomous human being. And again, the religious right is really pushing these personhood type bills that don't allow us to make those choices. Ending religious privilege and tax law. Property tax exemptions for religious institutions that aren't accessible to other nonprofits that provide the same or even higher quality charitable services. There's those parsonage tax things that many of you know about. So we're pushing back against those as well. And women's health care, again, this is part of science-based medicine, but it really deserves its own category simply because the religious right is working so hard to take away women's access to reproductive health care. And this is another very serious moral issue. It's, having good contraceptive access and education is such a positive solution to poverty, to, women's health care, education. I mean, those two things, if we could win on those, many of this other stuff would just fall right into place. Military, there's not a ton we can do at the state level to support our military service members, but we do represent Arizona's delegation of the Military Association of Atheists and Freethinkers. We've just started a new FreeThought group in Sierra Vista. A lot of those folks are in the military. And as any of you who have served in the military know, there's a lot of discrimination against non-theists. All of the services that traditionally you get through the religious chaplain, there's no other way to get those services. And so these service members lose a lot of access to important opportunities. And it affects their ability to get promotions and so forth. So anything that we can do at the state level to support our service members, we're going to do and speak out on their behalf. And then religious expression. We obviously support free religious expression on a personal level. But at the government level, we have to end this taxpayer funding endorsement of religious expression. So things like government funding of religious monuments and that sort of thing, we're going to be in opposition to. And so how are we going to get these issues, how are we going to advance these issues in this state? So I'm going to talk just briefly about elections because we actually have a really good opportunity this election to break the Republican supermajority in the state capital. And we are not a partisan organization, but the fact of the matter is there is no Republican Party in this state. It is the Center for Arizona Policy Party, and they are openly attacking all of our secular values. So when I actually read the Arizona Republican Party platform 2 nights ago, and I mean, all of our issues, they're in direct opposition to. So that's a problem. we're trying to remain nonpartisan, but these people, want to destroy everything that's important to us. So I want to point out these competitive districts because even if you do not live in these areas, if you're looking to get involved politically, these are the districts that matter. Because of redistricting, these districts have, they're new, they have a very even split between Democrats and Republicans and a large independent swing opportunity. And so, and I have to tell you, in every single one of these districts where there are Republican incumbents, those Republican incumbents have received a 95% rating or higher from the Center for Arizona Policy. So again, it's not that we're opposed to the Republican Party, but it's not the Republican Party in the state. So if you live in any of these areas or nearby and are looking to get involved, they need volunteers, they need help knocking on doors. And I've spoken to many of the Democrat candidates in these parties, and they're all strong supporters of secular government. So, and that's important work for you to do too. We need to continue to bring this into the public discourse. So ask your candidates where they stand on church-state separation, how they feel about religious expression in public life, and so forth. And then you can make your own decision about who the secular party is in this state. But again, the only way that we're going to be able to stop this bad policy and push good policy is to win these competitive districts this coming election. So, if you want to help, this is the $3 million giant that we're up against, and I think we're doing a good job. They've got a $3 million budget, we've got a $60,000 budget, and we're still managing to make some impact on legislation. We did get some pieces of policy amended in ways that made it more secular, and it's only going to get better. But we do need your help. We need you to sign up for action alerts. You can do that on our website, which is secularaz.org. I also have a sign-up sheet on the table in the back there if you want to sign up. And I'll send out action alerts on the pieces of policy we're working on. We need for our legislators to know that there is a sizable constituency in the state that supports secular government. And when I go in to testify in a committee, if they've gotten 1,000 emails from secular Arizonans, it puts a lot more weight behind my testimony. So I really need that support from you all to send those emails to your legislators. And obviously, we need some financial support. We're really pushing to increase our number of monthly contributors. With a nonprofit as small as we are, we need to be able to rely on some regular income. And I'm running out of breath. I forget to breathe. So sometimes it's better when I sit down to speak, so when I fall, it's closer to the so anyway, we have a matching grant right now. So for every new monthly donor that signs up for a $25 contribution or more per month, it releases a $100 contribution from our $20,000 matching grant. So that's a really great way to make your dollars go a little bit farther and for us to get that regular support that we need in order to continue fighting this theocratic legislation. So now, because this is a town hall and because I am your lobbyist, I am representing you at the state capitol, I would really love to hear from you guys what issues are important to you, and tell me how I'm doing, how you feel about what's happening at the State House, and let's talk.
What's the connection between the personhood bills and the end of life? I know at the other end, but I don't know at the end of life end.
Right, so generally these personhood bills, and they tend to be boilerplate legislation from, there's actually a Personhood USA organization that's putting out this legislation. It generally defines life as, personhood as from conception to natural death. So that means, you know, no medical intervention can help ease your death. That's yeah. So it's absurd, but that's what we're looking at.
I understand Jen wants to defund Planned Parenthood, even though only 3% of their funds go to abortion.
Yeah.
So is that one of those bills?
Yeah, and I didn't go over all the bills we worked on. We actually lobbied on a little over 20. And on the back table, I have our legislative wrap-up that goes over all of the bills we worked on and all the actions we took. But I can talk about that a little bit. And I was speaking to Michelle Steinberg, who runs Planned Parenthood, their advocacy group that does their lobbying, and she was expressing frustration about even the term defunding, because it seems to imply that the Planned Parenthood is somehow funded by the government, when in fact what we're talking about is they get partial reimbursement from Medicare or Medicaid funds for services they provide. It doesn't even cover the whole service that they provide, and these are low-income women and men. They're not abortion services. No government money is going to provide abortion services. So it's really just taking away compensation for services that they're providing. And that's part of the movement to end abortion in our state is to take away those funds. And there was, what was the other one? It was the Medicaid, and then tax credits. So generally, if you give to a charity, you can take a tax credit if it's a charity that serves the working poor. And now you're no longer able to do that for organizations that also provide abortions. So again, it's just bills that are directed explicitly at Planned Parenthood.
So I know you met with Linda Lopez.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about what came out of that, what you learned?
Well, she's working really hard to look at what options are available in our state for death with dignity. She has proposed legislation many times in the past. It's never gotten out of committee. And so we're working on looking at some different coalition options so that we can really get a sort of a groundswell of support. She talked about doing some just end-of-life care information legislation so that doctors would be required to inform you of all of your legal options. I guess she proposed this in maybe 2009 and it failed, which is just absurd. I don't understand why access to information is something that is not something that we want to put into statute. But anyway, so it is something that she's looking at the best way to proceed. What kind of initiative is most likely to succeed in this legislature? So we'll be working on that, and I'm excited about her support of our organization on that issue.
Yeah, as a secular person, I have a little bit of a problem with the fact that we're pushing for marriage equality for everyone, because as a secular person, I think marriage is a religious concept where women are property, and I think we should be pushing for civil unions for everybody. And if the Bible thumpers and the Quran thumpers want to go have a ceremony later, fine. But the only legal
that's essentially what our position is. You know, we as advocates of free religious expression, we support our First Amendment. We believe that the Catholic Church in the United States of America has the right to say marriage is between a man and a woman. But a civil document issued by the civil government has to be equal for all consenting adults with legal standing, period. Yeah.
This is in regard to pharmacists denying prescriptions to people. I'm frankly amazed that the American Pharmacists Association doesn't say something about this, because it seems to me that it's similar to a lawyer reaching the contract that he has with the state. And I'm a chemist, and I belong to the American Chemical Society. The ACS certainly does not condone chemists setting up labs, for example, to make illegal drugs. Do you know if the American Pharmacists Association has a position
I
on
haven't
this?
heard them take a position on it, and I know that was part of the ACLU at Planned Parenthood's strategy, was to try and get some of those professional organizations to speak up on this. But you're exactly right, and in fact, when you mentioned lawyers, that's how this particular piece of legislation started, because there was an initiative by the State Bar Association that would have added sexual orientation to the list of protected classes, so lawyers would not be able to discriminate against clients who were from the LGBT community. And so this legislation is more than just pharmacists. It's any state licensed professional. So your real estate agent could refuse to work with an LGBT couple. And they were very explicit on the floor of the House and the Senate that the reason for this was so that to empower religious people to discriminate against the gay community. And they made some changes to the legislation to clarify that, no, you can't discriminate against someone based on their race, you can't discriminate against someone based on their gender, but we're making sure that it's okay to be able to discriminate against the gay community. So,
yeah, I'm speaking here as an educator, and this is just a suggestion. I think all these ideas, same-sex marriage and religion and teaching the Bible and all that, are connected at the base in education. Because we are going an uphill battle. We are fighting this, fighting there, but at the bottom line, if we want to do a long-term successful plan, we have to start at the school, at the kindergarten, and that's where we do have hope. Because children are just open. I mean, that's the subject.
And I completely agree with that. I really think that the most significant issue we work on is education. Other problems can fall right into place if we could solve that problem. If we have a well-educated citizenry, then we can work on some of these issues, and people won't be so easily have the wool pulled over their eyes on this other stuff. So.
You mentioned our legislative districts and the activities that you've had related to that, but I'm kind of wondering about the activity of the organization related to our current Senate race, and what you think about Carmona and his opponent here in our state, whether there's been any conversation or
because we lobby on the state level, we're much more involved in the state legislative races, but Kirsten Sinema's been a huge supporter of our organization. I know we have a lot of Carmona supporters. I haven't spoken to them personally, and obviously because Kirsten has personally supported our organization, I know she's a strong secularist, so I can't speak too much to that, but I really, again, encourage folks to call your candidates and ask them direct questions about secularism, and it'll become very clear to you who's on our side and who's not.
Two things. First, the unholy alliance between the Congregationalists, the general Protestant folks who may be in favor of birth control. And the Catholic Church has changed its complexion in the last 20 years. The Catholic Church originally allied with the evangelicals and this whole super Christian group to fight abortion, which is their original thing. The Catholic Church, however, has always felt that abortion included birth control. So now what's happened is, in the states, we are getting all this legislation that you're battling that is eventually going to end up taking birth control out of the hands of any of the parties. Second point, what in the policy is there in education to monitor not only the giving of money to private schools, but to go into the curriculum of charter schools? I have known of 2 charter schools up in the Mesa area that the youngsters that go to that school must call each other brother or sister because they are heavily Mormon, and that is the way it is. That is the way the charter school is set up.
Yeah, well, so the first point, the power structure of the Catholic Church is really pushing this anti-choice, anti-reproductive health care legislation, and they're very powerful. But the grassroots people in the Catholic Church are not supportive of this legislation. It's really the power structure, and we're able to work with a lot of people of faith in our coalition. Catholics for Choice has a huge following, and I'm sure you've all read the statistics. 98% of Catholic women abuse contraception. I mean, that's higher than the general population. So it's obviously, so we have a lot of opportunities to work with people of faith whose denominations may have positions that are in opposition to our own, but where the people actually realize that they need to have these options in their lives. And as far as schools, one of our initiatives this year that we would really like to get off the ground, and we need more volunteers, so if this is something folks are interested in, please come see me. We really want to have a school board task force because it's not, there are too many districts for me to monitor. I'm the only full-time employee of our organization. We've just been able to hire an intern, JP, and he's helping with some of the work. But again, it's a big state and there's a lot of school districts. And while we have some fairly good statutes that keep public schools secular, if the school boards aren't enforcing that, we have to know about it and then we have to litigate. So, and we have different organizations in our coalition that work on the litigation side. We work on the statute side, but we have organizations like Freedom from Religion Foundation that can help with that. So we really want people monitoring their school boards and city councils as well, because again, some of the tax policy stuff happens at the city council level. There's often, I know there are many city councils in this state that open with a very explicitly sectarian prayer, and those are things that we can work on, but I have to know about them. So again, if you're interested in a school board task force or a city council task force, I'd love to have you on my team.
I'm concerned about the age of people that you are getting to. Our organization, our Secular Humanist Jewish Circle, has mainly older people, mainly older group here. What is happening at the University of Arizona? How much reception are you having? How does it relate? And I'm concerned about the voter registration.
Right.
Could you speak on that?
I will, and I have really good news for you. The secular movement among the student population is exploding. I mean, it is exploding. And we've done our organization has been doing a lot of community organizing to create non-theistic groups in communities that haven't existed before. And it's hard in some of the older communities. When we go into a university and suggest starting a secular student alliance, 30 kids show up the first time, and it just builds from there, and they take control of it, and they're ready for leadership. And the Secular Student Alliance at the national level, I don't remember the rates, but they started off as this tiny little organization, and now they have dozens of of chapters in every state. And the conferences, some of the national conferences that we've been going through, the face is getting younger and younger and more egalitarian in terms of gender equality. So we're seeing some really positive progress in that regard. So some of our groups still have an older face. That's good because this younger group that's exploding, we need some wisdom. We're all gung-ho, and you guys have been doing a lot of this work for a long time and can keep us from making mistakes. So I'm not discouraged to see that there are still some older groups here, but believe me, the student population is exploding.
Serah, I want to, if you don't mind, I would like to focus a little bit about Secular Coalition for Arizona.
Sure.
And what it stands for, because the Secular Coalition for Arizona, which I'm a board member too on that, is primarily a coalition of a lot of different groups in the state. It's a coalition, and it is the voice at the legislature primarily to speak for the secular community in the state. And you mentioned Secular Student Alliance. That's another group, and they're setting up things but that's not all on the Secular Coalition for Arizona. Those are other groups. And I would like to also say that sometimes some of these things like education and some of these other things, if you have a complaint about something that's happening in the school, sometimes it's best to go to contact me, American Atheist State Rep, or Freedom from Religion Foundation, or from other organizations that are more focused on actually dealing with those particular problems. The Secular Coalition, of course, can steer you to those member organizations, but they're primarily a voice at the legislature trying to combat that Center for Arizona Policy, that big monster that was up there.
Yeah, so we represent right now 15 different non-theistic organizations throughout the state. The American Atheist chapter here in town, FreeThought, Arizona, obviously, Americans United for the Separation of Church and State, Greater Phoenix chapter are some of them. We have several different secular student alliances at the different universities, and that coalition sort of informs me what issues the secular community cares about, and I lobby on those issues. And as a coalition, we have a pretty public face. So I do get the phone calls from teachers, who are being asked to teach religious material, and then I can divert that, send it to the appropriate organization within our coalition, because there are kind of some different specialized groups and some local stuff. That's great, and that's part of what we're trying to do is really support and draw attention to the great work that our local organizations are doing.
Hi, I just wanted to comment that there is a Secular Student Alliance that just started this semester at the U of A.
Is it? Yes.
Yeah. We've got 57 members. The last time I looked at the member count on the Facebook page.
Yeah. So I'll have our community outreach guy get in touch, and we would love to have that group in the coalition. And I know Mesa Community College just got their SSA up and have asked to join our coalition, so we're going to start adding some other groups. And the national SSA has just organized kind of a regional chapter here, and I think they're going to do some grassroots organizing to get more of those groups up and running, and they can join the coalition as well. And so again, like the more constituents that I can point to when I'm lobbying and say, I think that when I looked at the Pew Religious Landscape Survey, the number of explicitly non-theistic people in Arizona should be something like 450,000, and that's explicitly lacking in God beliefs. That's not agnostics. That's not people who are just apathetic about religion. That's people who say they do not believe in God. So we should have some much bigger numbers, and so I'm really pleased to see these groups springing up around the state.
This relates to the university situation. A few months ago, and I'm sorry I didn't bring the article with me, but I was shocked to read that the religious groups were given permission to meet on campuses and exclude non-members of their religion, and I was shocked. I didn't realize. Is anything more going on with trying to overturn that?
Well, I haven't seen any again, because we work on the legislative side of things. I haven't seen any statutes that address that, and I'm not sure what we could do at the state level. But if that's happening at state universities with taxpayer money, then that's something that we're going to look at. So I'll look into that in more detail. And I know that the Secular Student Alliance has been working on it, and yeah, that's something that we can take a look at.
Thank you.
Two things. Since New York allowed gay marriage, the state has gotten $260 million in civil unions.
Yeah.
Just on a so I think it's a
Put
benefit.
the mic
Oh, sorry. I think it's a benefit for states.
Yeah, the tourism benefit is huge. Yeah.
So what is the state's position in if you don't allow abortions or birth control? Are they gonna provide more Medicaid, more health care, and more welfare?
That would be nice. No, and that's one of the things that, you know, Planned Parenthood talks about all the time when they're lobbying on this issue is like where the support for these women if they're having all of these pregnancies and don't have access to birth control and can't make decisions about the size of their own families. Where's that support? And it's not there in this state.
It seems like they're cutting more.
Yeah.
Are there any lawsuits that are being initiated by the ACLU or Freedom from Religion Foundation or any other groups that are attacking these bills that obviously are against the Constitution?
Right. And again, I'm not as up on the litigation side of things, but I know that the 2036, the abortion bill, is in court. The ACLU has been working on some of them, particularly those reproductive health care bills. And Anne, are you looking up the ACLU's litigation list? Yeah, because I think that they're involved in litigation on the reproductive health stuff as well. So hopefully, and is it 2036 that is enjoined, or was it the funding?
The 20-week abortion ban.
Yeah, so the 20-week abortion ban bill, which is 2036, is enjoined right now. So it's not, while it's signed into law, it's not in effect at this point because it's still in court. So hopefully we'll see some progress with that. And again, you know, if you're looking to support an organization that does some great job on the litigation side of things, the Freedom from Religion Foundation, which is one of our coalition members, is a great organization.
I think if they kept losing a lot of these lawsuits, maybe they'd finally stop passing those bills.
Yeah, that's, you know, yeah. Well, and that's one of the fortunate things about this Bible curriculum bill is that school districts aren't really interested in implementing it because the local district is going to have to bear the cost of the lawsuit and they can't afford to pay for that. So, and it's just so clearly unconstitutional.
I have a question about how you spend your day when the legislature is in session. I saw videos of you giving testimony. So that's part of it, and I thought you were very effective, and that was a very valuable contribution. Now you must spend a lot of time waiting to be called on.
Yeah, well, and paying attention. You know, so this was my rookie year as a professional full-time lobbyist. Last year we did lobby, but we were an all-volunteer organization at that time. So a lot of what I did was just trying to get to know who our legislators are, trying to figure out what their values were, so I could frame things in a way that would be effective for them.
So do you have informal contacts with other lobbyists or with the legislators?
Yeah.
How does that work? How does the day go?
Well, I mean, it varies widely depending on if there's a bill that I'm working on that particular day, but you know, a lot of phone calls and emails with legislators trying to get to know them, introduce ourselves and our coalition, a lot of research going through the legislation and reading it very carefully so that when I testify on it, I'm knowledgeable and what the legal ramifications of things are. I did have great relationships with Anjali Abraham, who's the ACLU's lobbyist, and Teresa Almer, who lobbies for Planned Parenthood. They were great friends of mine that sort of introduced me and showed me who's who. But a lot of times sitting in committee too and listening to people saying crazy things, which helped our fundraising a little bit, because when I do the live tweeting of the legislature and people see what I'm up against, they send some money. So that was an effective fundraising technique. And then in the off season, it's been really interesting because I get to travel around, talk to the groups that we represent, and I've been talking to a lot of candidates. I was really blown away by how many candidates were reaching out to us and in fact asking for endorsement. And we hadn't even as a board discussed doing endorsements because we thought who would want the atheist lobbyist to endorse them. So the first time, you know, I got a call asking for an endorsement and I was like, what's wrong with you? And I have met with leadership in the House and Senate to ask about, you know, how we should do that, and really what they want is to get volunteers, boots on the ground. The endorsement process isn't going to be very effective this year, but what we really need is to send volunteers to those contested districts. So.
And as a 501c4 organization, we can legally endorse.
We absolutely can legally endorse. So, for example, if I wanted to endorse Kirsten Cinema, I could legally do that. But yeah, I mean, and we've been very impressed with how ready folks are to work with us, and in the religious community too. That's been another big surprise for me, is that a lot of progressive groups of faith have been seeing that we are lobbying effectively on these issues that they also care about, and they want to work with us. So that really improves the size of the people that we can say when we lobby. You know, like we're sure we're the atheist lobby group, but we also have, you know, the Unitarian Universalists and the Episcopalians and the Presbyterians are all in agreement with us on these issues. So.
Serah, I wasn't here for all of your talk, but I'm wondering if you are familiar with what's new to me, National Atheist Party.
Yeah, in fact, I saw your email about that. We've been sort of watching them with curiosity to see what happens, because it's an interesting idea. And, you know, they've not approached us to join the coalition, so we're not really taking a position on them at this point. But it's an interesting experiment to see what happens with that, and you know, can they organize around that idea? Is there enough political clout for that to be an effective way of organizing? I'm curious to see what happens. And it's certainly, at the very least, you know, drawing more attention to the fact that there are atheist Americans in this country, and we are engaged in the political process, and we're good people, we contribute to our community. So I think everything like that gets the public discourse talking around secularism and atheism, it's a positive thing.
As I say, it's brand new to me, but I would encourage everybody here to go to their website or look up National Atheist Party, because their mission is just perfectly congruent to yours.
Yeah.
It really is encouraging.
There's also a Facebook page, because there's an Arizona chapter for the National Atheist Party, and they are looking for state chairmanships. They've got a whole list of job descriptions and jobs that they're looking for, and I don't mean paid jobs, but they'll love you, but no pay. Yeah.
Is there existing or about to exist or being proposed or promoted by the legislature attempts to encourage or enhance or promote the teaching of creationism in the school curriculum?
I have felt very fortunate that we've not encountered that legislation in Arizona. I think that the Center for Arizona Policy is taking a different tack on that. I think they're not trying to get creationism in the public schools, they're trying to get the public tax dollars in the religious schools. So I think that's the kind of legislation that we're looking at, rather than the creationism in public schools.
Excuse me, I think they do have, there is, a couple years ago, they had the freedom of conscience bills that they were introducing.
Yeah, these freedom, anytime you see that, you know, red flags should go off, and freedom of religion too. I mean, that's not, these are, you know, religious oppression bills that are...
Well, they haven't been pushing them, but they came up a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Where children weren't marked wrong for giving the creationist answer.
Right.
Yeah. But they kind of fell down.
They did fall down, and again, I think that's why the Center for Arizona Policy is really just focused. They're sort of giving up on that particular fight and really trying to get the public dollars in the religious schools that can teach whatever they want.
What efforts are being put forward, maybe not necessarily by you, but in general, to get more moderate Christians on the side of secularism? Because it seems to me a lot of moderate Christians actually agree with a lot of stuff that we're in favor of. They don't want to see, for example, an end to the availability of birth control.
Right. Yeah, and I do a lot of work with interfaith coalitions, and there's, you know, in the secularist movement in general, there's a big movement to have interfaith non-theistic cooperation on those issues where we have overlapping values. My dad's a United Methodist minister. He's a huge fan of my work. He hasn't let me preach at any of his congregations yet, but yeah, and you know, the Unite Against the War on Women rally that I spoke at, I talked about the different policy positions of nations, many of them supporting reproductive health for women, and have been approached since then by a number of people of faith who want to work with us on this issue. So we definitely are, again, anybody that we can get to push secularism will work with you on those issues.
Can you give any specific examples of progress you made in affecting legislation or religious, more modern religious groups supporting specific issues of how you work together?
Well, in terms of affecting legislation, two pieces. I mean, I feel like the biggest progress we made this year was developing relationships with legislators. I mean, we were brand new and nobody had heard of us before, and we're really surprised that there are enough folks in Arizona that care about church-state separation that they can afford their own lobbyists. So that was a big deal. But we worked on there was a state militia bill. It's a terrible bill, and unfortunately it died. But the bill contained an oath for Guards members that required that they swear to God. So we worked with conservative Republican legislators to get that amended to include the option to affirm the oath, so that the atheists can go kill Mexicans on the border too. But but again, it's just the fact that the Republican leadership was willing to even work with us on that, knowing, and I'm never shy about saying who I represent. Every single time I testify, I represent Arizona's atheists, agnostics, humanists, and other freethinkers. I am not embarrassed to represent you people. So I was really thrilled that we were able to work with leadership on that. And this Bible curriculum bill too. I mean, Terry Proud cares deeply about constitutionality. I mean, she's very conservative, and she's the Sarah Palin of the Southwest, but she did add language to her bill that requires the teachers respect the non-belief perspectives of students in those classes. So having the word non-believer, added to a piece of legislation in this political climate in Arizona is a big deal. So and again, she's an evangelical Christian, and was really I was really surprised that she was able to work with us as much as she did. So I would have liked to see a lot more changes to that bill, but I was happy to see what we did get.
Okay, well, let's give a big hand to Serah.